It has actually been a genuine honor to work with REDgen over the years. I have the privilege of working throughout the country with many different organizations, but I mean it most sincerely. There is an authenticity to REDgen, a working from within the community to develop the community, and a passion and a compassion that your group has that makes it a complete honor for me to be here today. In terms of kind of my work, so I'm an adolescent doctor, I'm a pediatrician, but I do a lot of work in trying to make it so that young people will have the kinds of adults they deserve in their lives. I'd want to call your attention to a website that is absolutely free. That is a very comprehensive website called parentandteen.com. Lots of information that'll make whatever I talk about today look tiny. And then if you're someone who likes books, the book Building Resilience in Children and Teens, published by the American Academy of Pediatrics, will also really broaden out this topic today. So when we think about fostering resilience in children, the first thing we need to know is that we are the role models. We have to stop parenting as if we're parenting a 4-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 16-year-old, and begin understanding that we're raising a 35-year-old. And when we begin to do that, then we begin looking at ourselves differently. Because we're the 35, 40, and 50-year-olds that we are showing them what it can be like. And what that means is that we treat this more like a journey than an event. There's not a magic word you can say to your child, be resilient, that's going to work. It's about modeling it yourself. It's about taking every opportunity to build resilience. And oh my gosh, has 2020 given us a lot of opportunities, right? Because every emotion, every earned emotion is also an opportunity to build resilience. If we pay attention to those emotions, pay attention to those experiences, and choose to do the right thing, rather than suppress them, put them away, or say they're uncomfortable. Every emotion is an opportunity for growth. And now is a really interesting time because we all are having shared emotions. So we all can rise together. There are so many opportunities right now to build a resilient generation. I personally think that if we do this right, this could be the greatest generation ever. Why? Because there's something that all of the simultaneous crises have in common. One, and so now we're talking about racial reckoning, we're also talking about COVID, we're talking about economic crises. One thing that they have in common is that they strike the vulnerable among us with the greatest force. That means that if we choose not to sweep that under the rug and instead choose to ask why, we have the opportunity to really begin addressing some fundamental problems we have and lift all of us together. But there's another issue, which I think is perhaps as important, which is that we have this time we are all living through, which is quite literally a time of distancing us, right? And we've never lived through anything like this in our lifetimes. So I want you to imagine now what it's going to feel like for this generation when they're experiencing things that they've considered normal in the past but never paid attention to. What's it going to be like when they get to sit next to their friends and learn together in the presence of a caring teacher? What's it going to be like when they get to worship together, to play on team sports together, to hug their grandmas and grandpas again? What this means is that this generation, precisely because their relationships have been hurt, because they've been separated from relationships, they may rediscover the importance of human relationships. So just imagine for a moment, if this generation grows to become the generation that again venerates its elderly, protects the vulnerable, and cares about human connection and human relations as the core fundamental things human beings need, right? This could be the generation who really understands that each of us by ourselves are fragile, but that when we join together in groups, then we are stronger like a bundle of sticks than the sum of our individual parts. I want you to imagine, if we play this right, how fabulous this generation could be. Because make no mistake about it, this is the moment that's going to define this generation. And the Depression era kids were really frugal. That's what defined the generation. What if this generation defined itself by its commitment to protecting the vulnerable and to having human relationships had let all of us rise together? Wow. So what's really important is that we use this opportunity to build a generation that is emotionally resilient and emotionally intelligent. Let's look at the truth. We come from a culture that too often says strength is stoicism. Strength is pretending that you don't have emotions, particularly men. That strong people get through it. Strong people do it alone. None of that was ever true. All that was true is that it led to suppressed emotions. Now, if your eyes are open, if you are human, if you are breathing, and if you are alive, you're having all sorts of emotions, like fear. And the solution to emotions is to first recognize them without shame or stigma, to know that they exist, to name them, to give you control over them so they don't have control over you, to live in the present so that you don't catastrophize them, but can really look at them in a realistic way, and then to connect with other human beings, whether that's your friends, your spouse, your community members, or a therapist, but to connect with other human beings, to name them, process them, and ultimately release them. Imagine if we walk out of this crisis with less stigma around having emotions and instead learn to celebrate them, to elevate them, to release them, and to acknowledge that it's the best part of being human is to have these feelings. But feeling strongly can be a burden. So we have to figure out how to manage the emotions. Imagine that as a take-home lesson.